And we are live. So since the hour is here, I am going to call this January 21st, 2021 meeting of the Franklin City School Board to order and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are going to forego 2.3 because we did not have a closed session. So there is also no need for 2.4 to certify our closed session. We are moving quick tonight. So that leads us to 2.6, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And 2.5, we're going to move on past that because we have no motions from closed because we had no closed session. And that is going to lead us to 2.8, roll call. Ms. Moore, could you lead us in that, please?
Sure. Robert Holt.
Present.
Amy Phillips.
Present.
Tanya Smith. Marshall Williams.
Present.
Dr. Andrea Shelton.
Present.
Mr. McCrary.
Present.
Mrs. Carrie Johnson.
Present. And we do have a quorum, so we are good to proceed. Next up is 2.9. Oh, excuse me. I skipped over 2.7, so let's go back. That would be approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Then moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye. Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson, at large, aye. And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries. Moving back to where we were. See, I got so excited, I was skipping over things. 2.9, citizens time. Ms. Moore, did we have anyone sign up or send anything in?
No, we did not.
All right. Moving up next. We are not even 5 minutes in and we're already down to 3. Consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda this week. The first one is the Hampton Roads Workforce Council grant. This is formerly known as Opportunity Inc. So this is the modification of that contract. Dr. Sterling, do you have anything to add in regards to that?
No, it's just that this contract has been asked for the funding to be increased for our student workers because they have been working, and we are very pleased to announce that the workforce has granted us an additional $18,000 to continue our program. So this is an increase to what we previously were awarded.
Nice. And then next up would be the school board work session minutes from September the 3rd. And we'll have several more that will be coming out. Ms. Moore has been working diligently on those all day. And then we have the minutes from the October 15th school board meeting, followed by the minutes from our November 5th meeting. As you may recall, we only had that one meeting in November, and that was a work session. And then December, we had a emergency call meeting on December the 8th. So that is the minutes from that meeting. Is there any discussion in regards to these items?
I would like to pull 3.2 and vote on that separately, please.
Okay. All right.
And I have a question for Dr. Sterling regarding 3.1.
Okay.
The increase is, are services, is that an increase of services as well? That the 18,000 would cover?
No, it's not an increase in services. It's the pay for student workers. It's their actual pay when they go to their job sites. We were
Okay,
running out, so we had to ask for additional funding.
okay.
If I can clarify that for you a little bit, Mr. McCreary,
Yes, please.
the students that participate in that program, what that program does is it gives these students skill sets and provides them actual work opportunities for which they get paid out of the grant. And the students that are participating in this program, their pay, because their pay is funneled through the grant, is starting to exceed what the grant was initially established for. So this is to increase that grant funding so that those students can continue with that work experience.
Okay,
Yes, I do apologize for that because I'm looking at the change specification. I wanted to make certain that information is clear. Anytime we ask for an increase or a modification, it's going to be placed in there. So the 18,000 will be added to the work experience. So I'm sorry I wasn't that detailed, but it is right there in the change specification portion.
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions in regards to the items in the consent agenda?
And what's the reason we're pulling 3.2?
I was absent, so I have to abstain from that set of minutes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve consent agenda items 3.1, 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any discussion?
Yes, this is Jerry, Ward 6. I may need to verify that I was present on the September 3rd. Can you bear with me 1 second while I look?
Sure. And I'm gonna pull up the minutes too, because that Ms. Moore usually does list. Ms. Johnson is listed as the only member that was absent, but I don't think you had you taken your oath yet?
Yes, I was looking for the date. I know it was right around that date. That's why I don't recall. Well, I would like, I'm sorry, is this the same item
Yes,
voting
it
on
is. It's the
separately?
same-
Okay,
It's the
we
same
can
one.
continue then. I
Okay.
think I'll abstain from there.
So this motion is in regards to 3.1, 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5. Any other discussion? Then hearing none, moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries. So do I have a motion in regards to item 3.2, the school board work session minutes from September 3rd?
I move that we approve the minutes from September 3rd.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any discussion? Again, moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, abstain.
Carrie Johnson at large, abstain.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. Thank you, everyone. Moving on, next up is item number 4, human resources. And then we have that followed by finance and operations and the superintendent's overview. So Dr. Sterling, I will turn it over to you if you would indulge us.
Oh, yes, I will. Thank you so much. We're going to have a presentation, a follow-up presentation with Dr. Holloran, and Mr. Jeff Ryder, Superintendent of Operations. Go ahead and proceed.
Good evening. This is a follow-up to last week's presentation on the Federal First Coronavirus Response Act update. Again, it's a follow-up to last Friday's presentation. Okay, the information that was requested is displayed in this chart at the very top. You can see that there were 7 employees that applied for and requested the FCRA last school year. We, of course, coded the employees' names, and you see employee 1 through employee 7. And then in the next column, you'll see the start date of their FCRA. You'll see the end date. You'll see the biweekly pay, because the option that they chose qualified for 2/3 of their pay, and that's the amount of pay that they were paid. And in their current status as of January 2021, employee number 1, you can see has since resigned. Employee number 2, after November 23rd, used sick days because the 12 weeks were maxed out. And again, you can only utilize up to 12 weeks total. Employee number 3 is working in an academic area. Employee number 4 is working in an academic area, providing extended support. Employee number 5, after December 31st, used sick days, which means they, if we still had it, would have would have requested to continue to use the FCRA. And employees number 6 and 7 are currently working in an academic area currently. And then the total pay, that's the total amount that was paid out over the total number of weeks. You can see the first person, employee number 1, was around $7,140, all the way down to employee number 7, which is just $434.11, because they only utilized 2 weeks of it. And as stated last week, the directive ended December 31st, and it affected those 7 employees. And the question that we've been discussing is it feasible to extend to March 31st, 2021? And pretty much it would be really difficult financially, because we have no way of knowing out of all of our employees who between now and March 31st would request the leave and would qualify. So it really depends on which employees would apply and when the benefits would start and end. But as noted above, that number 4, that 4 of them of the 6 are back to work, leaving only employee 2 and 5. The next slide, please.
Dr. Holloran,
Yes.
for 2 and 5, if they exhaust their sick days, then what happens?
Well, if they exhaust their sick days, and I may want to defer to Mr. Ryder for that, but usually if they have no sick days or any days, it's usually a leave without pay, unless they qualify due to another reason that's not related to this medically. They may request regular FMLA.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then as noted in the chart, 1 person was paid for 12 weeks. Oh, no, once a person is paid for 12 weeks, again, they're not eligible for another 12 if we were to extend that benefit from January through March 31st. Employee 5 pay would start from January 1st and go another 6 weeks. And again, employee 5, I believe, had utilized 6 weeks. So however many weeks you've utilized up until December 31st, that's less than 12 weeks. That's how many remaining weeks you would have if we continue with that, that support. And then what is unknown again is what other employees may sign up. So financially, it would be hard if we commit, to know how much it would cost the division, especially with there being an uptick in or rise in the numbers, and it's really unpredictable right now. So we are recommending that due to the unknown level of financial liability this action may pose to the division, we do not recommend extending the federal program benefits of the expired FCRA. And that concludes the presentation. That is our recommendation.
I have a question about those 7. Are they across all 3 schools, or are they more in one location?
They're pretty much across all the schools, and pretty much if there's an incident or if there's someone that may need to take leave, because it's not a school specific, if I may say, you know, condition, or the pandemic impacts everyone. So I can really say it's been an equal balance of the location, whether central administration versus being in a school, as far as situations or incidents that could occur.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So all those 7 employees were COVID related?
They were, some were, well, actually, yes, they were COVID related, and most of them, it was because of daycare. If the daycare is not open and their child or their school is closed and they have to be home to help with virtual teaching and learning, that was the primarily reasons, because of childcare and support.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Ryder, Assistant Superintendent of Operations. Mr. Ryder, are you with us? Sometimes he has connection issues.
And I apologize if anyone just saw me using my phone. Miss Smith is having issues getting in, so I am trying to troubleshoot that as we're doing this. So bear with me.
Absolutely. I don't see Mr. Ryder. Oh, there he is. Oh, great, Jeff. Thank you. Now I can't hear you.
His audio is not working.
Mm-hmm. I do read lips though, Jeff. So, right, maybe. All right, where did he go? Jeff is the majority of the presentation this evening, so of course. There he is.
How about now? Can you hear me?
There he is.
Yes. I'm sitting here listening to you guys all for the whole thing, and then when I start to talk, I'm off mute and it doesn't work. Then when I sign back in, it works fine. Okay. All right. Okay, so here we go. I know it's late. You guys want to wrap it up, but this is the mid-year financial presentation where we traditionally now we look at the first 6 months and we make a really good projection of where we're going to be at the second 6 months for the year, so to see where we're going to end up at June 30th. And what we did behind the scenes for the last couple of weeks, though, was we got that information together, and then we actually sat down and laid it all out and had to make some decisions to make sure we would make it to June 30th with no deficit and no surplus. So, Tammy, so that's what this is. The financial statements are to fulfill 2 main functions, obviously to inform the board, which is a legal requirement, and then to project the remainder of the year. And I remind everyone that while it is illegal to adopt a deficit budget in Virginia, it is required to spend into a deficit if you have been granted rollover funds. Now, up to this point, it has been a $252,000 deficit we need to hit. But since the January 11th city council meeting, they allocated another $451,000 of rollover. So now we've got to hit 703 deficit. So we have to hit a Ms. Phillips, we have to hit a $703,000 deficit for this year, or it all goes back to the city. Okay. So general fund 10 is where you hit the 703,000. Everything else is, they're all restricted. They have restricted revenues, restricted expenses. It really kind of doesn't matter unless, you know, it's a huge deficit, but the textbook fund and the nutrition fund do not spend into deficits. So the general fund is where it's at. That's where it has to have a $700,000 deficit. Okay, so the first statement here, Amy, there we go. The first statement here is a comparison. Under the yellow bar is last year, kind of see where we're at. We had a $13.8 million revenue. This year we had a $13.9 million budget under the blue, light blue. The middle two columns, the budget, right next to the percentage of year gone, to the right is the budget. The next is 6 months actual. And then the all-important projection for the remaining 6 months. And then over there, the projection for where we think we're going to be at June 30th. So if you, if you bring it up a little bit more, Tammy. There. So you can see the projection of June 30th, 2021, before Dr. Sterling and I, did some big decisions the other day, we're looking at about $323,000 surplus. Well, we have to have a $703,000 deficit. So we have to, from that figure, we have to spend $1 million more. And so moving forward, both literally and figuratively, on the next slides coming up now, all of the 2020 stuff is pushed off because we're not really too concerned about last year. It's history now. So on the next slide, what you're going to see is from the blue shade to the right now. So I got to move all your beautiful faces over to my other screen because it's blocking out. And it won't move to the other screen. Okay, so I will bring it up on the other screen. Okay, so here, that's a little, okay, it's not too large. So, so everything under the light blue is exactly what you saw on the prior screen. So you got, I'll just take one of these, the biggest one, $8.2 million of salary and benefits for instruction is the budget. And we spent $2.8 million through December 31st. And that's only 35% of the budget. And that's absolutely normal and right on course, because inside that $2.8 million is only 4 months of payroll, but yet the 4.7 million is 8 months of payroll. So it should be somewhere around double what that figure is, because those are the teachers and that's how they're paid. And so some of these other things like instruction, for example, admin, you got a much higher, but even inside there's the 10-month employees. So the estimate of the last 6 months, as you go down, all of the salary and benefit categories, myself and Angie Edwards went through those for hours and hours and days, making sure that we accounted for every single employee. And to the best of our ability, we think that if we don't do anything, we'll end up at $7,581,000 for the instruction salary and benefits, $1 million of the $1.1 million for admin salary and benefits, and down the list goes. So then we have these, we have these huge underspends, the bracketed red items. One quick comment there, the operation and maintenance other, the reason that's a $451,000, that's black, that means you're going to be overspent. And that's true. That's the $451,000 rollover we were just given. So we have to do that. So now to the right of the green bar. To the right of the green bar is the spending plan that Dr. Sterling and I came up with to take all those negatives and kind of level them out a little bit and make sure that we get to the negative 703. So as we go down the list, here are the categories that we came up with. We're going to add about another $102,000 of instruction salary and benefits, and what that's made up of will be on the next slide. About $69,000 of admin salary and benefits. There's a couple of positions we're going to add there. Operations and maintenance is another $50,000 of salary and benefits. But you see the big blue thing sticking out there. That's $736,935. That is to redo all of the bathrooms at the elementary school. See, so you take them from the other lines and you put it all on that. And then the technology is another $67,500. So when we do that, and if we do that, if we're successful in all this, you can see that we will have $13.4 million of revenue and $14.1 million in expense, and we'll hit the negative 703 where we need to be. At this point, I should make a comment on the revenue. Why are we down so much in revenue? Well, the 252,000 up there for the city, that's supposed to be that because that's just rollover funds. We were gonna have that anyway. The other two things are a little disturbing. The state funding, I'm projecting that will be about $132,000 less than what they told us back in April. And there's a couple of slides we're going to talk about that coming up. And then the local revenue, also there's local grants that we had last year that we secured. One of them comes to mind was a $55,000 grant from the Southampton Charities. But that did not happen this year, and I have no indication that is going to happen. So there's where maybe I shouldn't have budgeted in revenue in the first place. I admit that. But it is what it is. This is where we are right now. And so I'm not going to talk about the purple column because that's the budget for next year. That's the first draft of the budget. So, and you're going to see this slide again because that is our budget for the next year. So let's just stick with this year to date. So that's a lot of information to throw at you right now. But down here is where we came up with those figures, the 102,000 of instruction. Just let me say that these are all the items that we presented to the city council at our joint meeting, and then we kind of split them apart between this year and next year. And so what we did find out was that if we added all these positions this year, we probably could have afforded it, but we wouldn't be able to afford it next year because we're only going to pay them half a year's salary this year. So when that other half hits next year, we're in deep trouble. So we had to, when I say we push it to the right side of the green bar for next year, probably won't get them next year either. But to the left of the green bar are the positions we're hoping that we can add and pay for between now and June 30th. And even adding those positions, we're still going to have the money to pay for the bathrooms at SP Morton. So we're going to add gifted teacher, the truancy, the assistant principal, the dean assistant principal at the high school, and the athletic director. Then a couple of other positions that were added because, to keep up with the changing times, a coordinator at the elementary and coordinator of facility improvements. And then because when we get to the capital improvement committee, that'll become a key position. And then 2 tech specialists, 1 at each of the schools. Okay. So that's how we came up with our projections from now till June 30th. And that income statement up there, if we come in on that, everything comes right into where it's supposed to be. The textbook fund, like I said, this is a standalone fund. It has its own revenue, and it can only be spent on textbook adoptions. But this is a little different look than I've given before because what's pretty important here is what was the beginning balance. See, this bank balance just keeps rolling for us, and it kept building and building. And so what I thought I'd do is add in the bank balance. So we had a beginning balance at July of 226,000. We're going to bring in about 73,000. Notice that was cut by the state. They had budgeted 75. And so Ms. Burkhalter just had a literature and an English adoption approved the other day at the earlier meeting. And so we have $197,000 available for the science adoption and whatever else we're going to be adopting. So that's the textbook fund there. The nutrition fund, you know, it's going along good. I project, again, we're going to probably have a surplus again this year because the United States Department of Agriculture actually kicked us over to the summer feeding program rates, which are higher than your regular rates, and then they extended it through the entire year. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. So we didn't add any people, and they've already asked. They already sent out an email the other day asking if we're going to feed kids all summer long, and so I'm hoping, you know, if we did it last year, we can probably do it again this year.
Mhm.
So we'll cross that bridge in April or May. I know this is a wall of numbers and it's like, who wants to see all these numbers, but I'll guide you through it quickly. I like to use these colored headings, and anytime a color changes, that means it's a new thing. So under the blue heading up there, Title I. So under Title I for our division, you've got the 1920, the grant was carried over, 339,000 was carried over from that grant to this fiscal year. And then we have this year's 2021 grant. So we usually have to spend one before we can spend another, but sometimes the payroll doesn't work out all that perfect. And so sometimes you are spending two of them simultaneously. So, so here are all the grants. And because the CARES funding came in just a couple weeks ago, that one CARES funding grant is more than all of our other grants combined. So I think I'm gonna, now that I'm looking at this, it's not really a very good format because there's so many numbers and you go grant by grant, but so I wanted to actually show you where we are with all of our grants. Tammy, if you go to the next page, you got your Perkins, your Title II, a bunch of minor grants, but the CARES funding actually, there are your four streams there. Well, I don't know why stream 3 is before. Okay. Oh, that was in the order of when they were received by us. So, we have the stream 2, about the 88,000, we've spent 17.9. We still got 70 to go. Stream 3 is spent. 22 is encumbered. It was encumbered at December 31st, but it was basically spent by now. Stream 1, 617, we've spent 74 of it. And then stream 4 was just, allocated to us, and we haven't spent any of that yet. And so this is the overall income statement. It's just all that other stuff added up. It's not really that meaningful, but there it is. When you lump it all together, that $348,000 down there, that includes all the grants. So the only thing the city will be looking for rollover is what is general fund 10. And those dollars will be, spent by the time June 30th rolls around. So real quick, you guys know that, I don't know if you know, but the governor puts out his proposed budget in December of every year. And then he, polls the General Assembly to get back to him with their versions of what they want to spend. And they comment on his budget. I thought I'd share this with you because it kind of shows you kind of where they're thinking. And I say the top half because this thing is so long, it has to go on 2 pages. But this one here, that top section there where, 6.6 million 8 dropped to 6 million 4. Those are your normal basic stuff. But under that blue column there where we had ADM of 1,016 students, based on our September 30th, the state has put out this calculator with only 968 students. So you can see all those drops in revenue, and it's kind of scary until you read down a little further. They've added a line that wasn't there in April. It's called something called no loss funding. So the $360,000 that they take away up top, they give it right back to you a few lines later. So that's the state calculator. That's kind of where we're sitting right now. This is not what we're locked into. We won't be locked in until March 31st ADM is published. Doesn't become red. Okay. So that's the rest of it. And so Tammy, if you just want to go to the next slide, I just wanted to, there's just a snippet of that income statement from up on slide 5 there. And I think I explained, but the $451,000 there is, that is the rollover. So we have a exact list of things we're going to pay for. And then the 736,000 is that's the only line that's significantly overspent on the whole general fund 10. But those two big items there, those are the two big ticket items. And this is kind of a slide that's for the cities, in case they were interested, of why we're putting so much money into the maintenance, the operations and maintenance line. It's because the maintenance of our schools is one of the priorities that came back from our survey. So, people are interested in making sure the schools are maintained, and we're putting money into the schools. Okay, so that is where we've come from in 6 months, where I think we're heading in the next 6 months. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is Jerry at Ward 6. So Mr. Ryder, this type of accounting is new to me. From a personal level and business owner, having to spend into a deficit is counterintuitive. So, we're always looking to save money.
Sure.
So part of my question, I'm struggling to know how to ask the question, but when, for example, the remodeling of the bathrooms, if that's additional funds are needed, and yet you're talking earlier, I think it was under Fund 10, about how to, where to spend the money. I don't mean this in a bad way, but it seems almost like a shell game, moving things around. So I guess my concern is, I know there's so many funds come from the federal and state level, or mainly from the state level. I know we have future spending for capital improvements. My concern is that we're honoring the taxpayers in Franklin on the local level, that we're not overspending on the local level. So I don't know, can you address those concerns?
Sure, and it is, yeah, to anybody that's a business owner, spending into a deficit is not something you intentionally do. But in this context, maybe technically it is spending into a deficit. But what you have to understand, Mr. McCreary, is that $700,000 was actually surpluses that the school division accumulated on the city's books. See that? So when I say spend in the deficit, all we're doing is spending we're spending the accumulated surpluses back down to zero. So that's what we say when we say we can only have a zero budget, but we have to spend into a deficit only if we had surpluses. Now, if we didn't have those surpluses to spend and we spent into deficit, everybody's in trouble. I mean, everybody's in trouble. But so what we have to do is, another way to state it is, we have to spend into our savings. We have to spend into the savings that we've accumulated in the city's checking account.
Okay,
and so that's why the city actually orders us, when we give you rollover funds, you have to spend into a deficit equal to the amount of the rollover we give you.
Mr. McCreary, if I can elaborate on that, the best analogy that I've had for that is our budget. So our annual budget is our checking account. And anytime we have funds left over, of course, that reverts back to the city to zero out our checking account, because every year at the end of the year, our checking balance has to be at a zero. So when that money reverts back to the city, if the city decides to give us back our carryover funds, then that goes into a savings account. It doesn't go back into our checking account, because the checking account represents our budget for that year. So our rollover would then go into a savings account. So we still have to come out that all of our accounts have to zero out at the end of every year. So in order to actually spend everything that we have to spend that checking or budget into a deficit so that it pulls over what's in the savings, which is our carryover. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, yeah, it's a little bit clearer. I'm learning though, but yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's actually quite different. It took me a while to get accustomed to that too, so don't feel bad.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to get, I want to help the board and the schools make good decisions. So appreciate it.
Yeah.
Dr. Sheldon, did you have?
With the 2.5 million and the salaries that you were talking about on slide 6, can the CARES funding be used for that?
Absolutely cannot.
I don't hear you.
The CARES funding has a specific whole list of things that you can spend it on, and you can't spend it on any kind of operating people.
Okay.
I have a question about the ADM number. I think if I recall, one number was 1016 and then
Yes.
the state reported 968.
Right.
What do you think the difference came from? Why do you think that might be?
Well,
Well, excuse me. I think I might have answered my own question. The 1016 is what we projected, and the 968 is what they say we actually had. Is that correct?
actually, it's vice versa. The 1016 was the actual ADM back on March 31st of 2020. And so that figure changes the 2020 revenue and it forms the 2021 estimate. So then in September, they take a reading just to kind of see, where are you trending? Where's everybody trending? And so when the state puts out this calculator, they say, well, geez, you're trending down. So if you're trending down and if it doesn't reverse itself by March 31st, be prepared for the state to pull funding. And that's why they put out that estimate. But then it really gets more difficult when they just pop in a no loss line. And it's like, well, what's that based on? And I think they just added up what we were going to be short and just give it back to us anyway. Maybe, I'm not really sure, Robert, maybe they're using CARES funding to shore up these ADM numbers. Because I don't know if any of you guys saw that one ADM report that Nita Stratton put out, where every single school division except 6 in Virginia had a negative ADM for September. Now, you can't tell me that all these kids are moving out of state. I mean, they're here. It's just that they're not being counted. And I think this is probably Dr. Sterling can comment better in her superintendent meetings that I think all the superintendents are grappling with this very problem.
Yes, we are actually, and we asked the state superintendent, as well as the governor and legislators, to hold us harmless for ADM this year. And that's why it is the same, we're getting the same funding. And I think it's not bad for Franklin City Public Schools, because we're only down 48 students in a pandemic. That's not bad at all. From what we had last year to this year, and we know a couple of them went to a virtual school that's counted now for Virginia. And I think those 48 and more will be easily recouped when we open up when it's safe to open up schools again. So they held us.
Anything else, any other questions in regards to this presentation by Mr. Ryder? All right. Hearing none, go ahead and proceed, Mr. Ryder. Next up.
Right.
It looks like bathrooms.
Bathroom remodeling project, I presented this back in October of last year, and it's been kind of something I think it's being presented every year. But due to the unique funding and requirements and the shift in thinking to the new schools for secondary, we actually reduced the scope only to include the elementary school. So this is just a reduced scoped presentation. And it's the same pictures, and on the next slide, I took the other two schools off, just so, you know, we're talking about 33 bathrooms, 46 toilets, 25 urinals, 58 sinks, for a whole total of 129 items that would be plumbed, about 3,316 square feet. So the procurement it's a large undertaking, and it's obviously well above $100,000. So the architect has to, you know, draft all the specs and get all the contractors in place. And then, you know, once they put that out to bid, then the Board of Education awards the bid, and the general contractor oversees 8 to 12 different subcontractors. Where are we at on that? Well, I've already gotten 2 architects and their price quote. I got the third one, which is Mosley. I will inform everyone now that the RFP, the official RFP threshold for professional services for architects is $60,000. And just to go with the bathrooms, we don't need an RFP. So that speeds up the process. Just give me a price quote, and then I'll bring these to the board. Hopefully at the very next board meeting, pick an architect and get moving, because, you know, and I'll be honest, it's going to be a little bit of a, you know, if you think about between now and June 30th, you know, I don't know if they do one hallway at a time or something, and you close off the rest of it. You know, there's a lot of details they're going to have to work out. How do they do that if we're bringing kids into the school? So it'll be challenging. So I look forward to, you know, working with those challenges as well. So where did we get the $736,000? One of our valued vendors, Windsor Homes, actually went through for a week and tallied up everything they could and gave us an estimate for each school, and their estimate was about $700,000. So I'm keeping some leeway in there in case the architects come back with some different figure. So just to kind of remind everybody, you know, inside the CARES Act Stream 2, we did have a couple of line items for specifically this. So we can use that. And then we get about $736,000 from operations. So the total into revenue, or how we're going to fund it. And then, so this is my very quick, you know, this is about how we're going to spend the money. But once we get the architect in and they give us their thing, these numbers will be tightened up. Alrighty.
I have a question. Is this just for the student use bathrooms, or will this include any bathrooms might be like this or teacher lounge or like that? Is that those as well?
Yes, I believe it's all of the bathrooms we counted up in the building.
This is Jerry, Ward 6. There's been mention of building new schools in Franklin. So I have questioning why we would spend this amount of money on renewing the bathrooms if we're going to turn around and build new schools.
That is a
Dr.
very
Stewart.
good question. Thank you. Mr. Ryder?
Yes. So what we are thinking right now is that we probably would not be able to have enough bonds sold to fund all 3 schools. So the SP Morton School will probably, you know, stay around for a while, and we are going to focus and change our concentration over to building a combined middle school, high school. And to that end, yesterday, or when we were working from home, I spent the whole day creating projections of how much that's going to cost, And what does it mean to the taxpayer? How much does a strata of taxpayers in Franklin City, how much can they expect their tax bill to go up? Because someone's going to ask, how much is it going to cost and how much is it going to cost the taxpayers? And I haven't shared that with anyone because I just finished it the other day, and I was going to actually possibly bring it to the finance meeting, but I wanted to cover it with Dr. Sterling because you think it's really expensive until you break it down. The tax rate in Franklin City is $1.03 and per your $100 of assessed value. And a $14 million school only adds 15 cents to the tax rate. And on a $40,000 house, you can imagine it's only $60 a year. So I think when I go through all those numbers with people, even because I know the mayor and the city treasurer, they're gonna want to look at these numbers, and it's like, this thing is not that far off. That's not that far, in my opinion, that's not unreachable. That's actually quite doable. But that's for all you folks, all you board members to meet with the city council and the capital improvement committee that Dr. Sterling is organizing. That's going to be probably one of the first things, because if you don't get the money, the rest is just conversation.
That was the thought process, Mr. McQuarrie. What do you think?
So, well, I guess two thoughts. When would it make, if SP Morton is going to be around for a while, would you start there, or you start all three schools at the same time in regards to remodeling the bathrooms?
Well, we've cut out the middle school and the high school. We're only going to do the SP Morton.
Oh, so the 700 plus thousand,
Yes.
that's only for redoing the bathrooms at SP Morton?
Yes, it was like 2.3 million for the other schools.
Oh, okay.
Really
All right, that was my
why are we
misunderstanding.
putting money into schools? We're going to hopefully replace.
Right. So I appreciate your question. And Jeff, I can't wait for you to be able to share those numbers with the committee. But focusing on the bathrooms and keeping up SP Morton is a #1 priority. But the second one, like you said, if we have this much money, we want to develop that capital improvement committee, but really start focusing on a new school. So we don't want to put that much money into renovating all of the bathrooms when that could cut into the cost of building a multiplex 6 through 12 grade school. So you're right on track with our thought process as well.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I do have one other question then, and we don't have to go too far into it, but the new schools, which property would they be on?
Oh, we haven't started yet.
Okay, I mean, that would be.
We need a board member on the committee, so we will volunteer.
Well, let me, so okay, there's not an existing property, in other words.
No, it will be up, of course, to the board. It will be the Capital Improvement Committee presenting to the board. The board will decide on if they want to have the existing Franklin High School, or they want to purchase land, or the city will donate land for a brand new site. So it's a lot that goes into it. So we're going to go very slow, because I know this is the first time that we've discussed building something from the ground up. Maybe about a good 30, 40 years, an entire building. So yeah, it'll be a process, but it will be the board's determination. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, proceed with the next, Mr. Ryder.
All right, so we sent out the survey a while back, somewhere at time in November, and we asked a bunch of pointed questions to get everybody's opinions on where we should be heading as a division. In this first slide, the board's highest priorities in the upcoming budget, what should we be focusing on? And the survey says academy or academic classes, the top green bar there. That's, you know, what are the top 3 highest scoring things? The maintenance of the schools, and then down the bottom yellow one here. Oh, you guys can't see my pointer. All right, so the bottom yellow one there is safety preparedness, and that is, of course, in response to COVID. And those are the numbers that make up the graphs. We should probably skip those next time for the presentation. And then based on your interactions, we ask everybody, what's your overall impression of the strengths of our division? It's very nice to see that academic classes is one of them. Technology is one of the higher ones, and professional development is up there. Not to say that the other ones are, you know, really weak, but these are the top 3 that jump off the page at you. Interesting. And then please rate the importance of the following on a scale of 1 to 6. So professional development again comes in incredibly, and this is, you know, that's kind of dear to my heart. The arts, music is the top one. That's the order of importance. I think a lot of, you know, when school divisions say we're going to cut costs, the first thing they're going to do is music or arts. No, not in this school division. We want to keep that stuff. But, you know. So yeah, you got the arts and music, professional development, and then the sports programming is the third. So we're in the process of a capital improvement plan to include 3 schools. Are you in favor of supporting 3 new schools being built? So this is kind of you kind of have to smile at this graph, yes. And then you go to the next graph of, do you want to pay for it? And so, so there's 80% yes and 20% no. And then will you support a tax increase to support the funding? All I can say is this, is of the people that apparently are residents of Franklin, there were more yeses than nos. And when I go through my presentation to Dr. Sterling about, you know, the entire debt structure of the city and how much can they afford and everything, and it's going to be an eye opener. I had another one of those jaw dropping moments, like, really? I was scouring their budget. I went through their whole 146 page budget over and over and over on Tuesday, and I found things that were just, they actually surprised me. I didn't need to delve that deep into it until I needed a reason.
Refocus, Jeff, refocus.
You're right. Okay, so back to the survey. So how do you think Frank is managing the budget? We meet expectations is the highest one, and
oh wait, go back to that again. How they were managing the budget? How we were managing the budget?
50. It looks to say 53% we meet the expectations.
Okay.
11% say we exceed, and 35% say we are below expectations.
Okay.
And then of the survey respondents, there's the graph.
This is Jerry. I have a question on the previous slide.
Sure.
Is there any reference to why they criteria they're basing their expectations on? The respondents, or is it just a gut feeling whether they got the money they wanted for their main interest?
I think it's more perception because they didn't have the opportunity to just jot down why.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, for instance, if like looking at the next slide, when you look at the respondents, 68% were staff. So could it be, that certain content areas they feel may have warranted more funding, or, pay, benefits, it could be a different, because looking at it from a staff member perspective is going to be different than looking at it from a parent perspective. Because a parent may say, well, I wanted more funding for we were just talking fine arts. So, I don't feel that there was enough funding put towards band, or, if you've got an academically high achieving student, I wanted more opportunities for dual enrollment. Or what about CTE? I don't feel that there were adequate funding for CTE classes that my child might be interested in. So, it's so many that different responses that could feed into that. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what that level was, because there wasn't a response like an explanation or an other.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Any other questions in regards to the budget survey? Hearing none, Mr. Ryder, you can proceed on with the budget first draft.
Okay, so I'll proceed with the final presentation for me tonight. A little bit of legalities there, that we have to submit our budget according to the Code of Virginia. Now, what everybody's going to see here is pretty much a lot of slides that you just looked at, but I'll just add the budget context for next year. So go ahead, Tammy. So the revenue assumptions, we have basically four sources. I'm projecting that the city will return to the 5.082 million that we had in 2019. And I used the calculation template proposed by the governor in December. The federal, as I'm based it on expending the prior year's grants and adding a portion of the CARES funding. And then based on this year's local revenue, I can't really say, I can't count on any large donations coming in next year. So I'm just going to leave it at what we're going to get this year. Okay. So those are the revenue assumptions. Again, there's the, oh, go ahead. So where we started with the 8.6 million for our budget this year, I think we're going to end up at 8,531,000 this year. And without any better information on ADM or anything, I think we're going to just assume for the moment, we'll assume that's what we'll get next year. The state, we budgeted 5,082,000, and, or I'm sorry, the city local appropriation, and I'm going to stay with that for next year for 5,082,000, and then about $90,000 in local revenue. So, our target for revenue next year is about 13.7 for the operating, the general fund. On the next page is just the same thing you just showed. I showed earlier. This is where I got the governor's. That's where we're sitting at right now, and as the time goes on here in this first quarter, we'll get the actual calculator that's actually going to be used for next year. But right down there, on the next page, Tammy, all the way down to the bottom, there, the 8,531,000, there it is, to the right there, to the right of the purple bar. There it is. There's the operating revenue for the Fund 10. And that number right above it that's where we get the textbook fund. That's where they calculate it. All right. So the city appropriation, again, I'm going to return it back to the 5,082,000. And then, the grant revenue, we have, I actually counted those things up. There's 16 of those grants, 32 separate income statements because they have overlapping years. And so I'll have a better snapshot of where I think we're going to end up next year, probably closer to the March 31st ADM. The expense assumptions, this should look familiar. These are the positions we asked for, the positions to the left of the green bars, what we're going to hopefully add this year. And then we're going to pay them the second half of their wages next year. And that's where we're going to, stay with the hiring, if we're successful in hiring all these folks. So when you put all this stuff into the income statement, now we can look at the column under the purple. So the change in fiscal year 2022. So you can see just the instruction line there, that first one. Under the spending plan, we add 102,434 of people this year, and that's going to be 6 months of wages. So then in the next year, you're going to pay the other 6 months. And so that's how we come up to the, 7,786,000 for salaries and benefits there. And you go down each one of those things, and the reason under the purple that says the change, the reason all those black numbers are there is because, in this year, we're going to underspend a lot of those due to COVID, but then next year, we assume it'll be a normal year. For example, transportation. The transportation will be about $125,000 low to budget because, we're not running the buses. But next year, we assume we will be running the buses, so you got to add that back on. So just because we're only going to spend 325 of our 450 budget this year, that doesn't mean you're going to do that next year. That's not going to repeat. So you got to get back up to the 450.
Jeff, can I say something at this moment?
Sure.
I'll just in case our board might be thinking about it, but may not have asked the question. You saw that large number to do the bathrooms for SP Morton, close to 700,000. Well, that's what we did. We went through the budget and we looked at, this is not a normal year. So if Jeff just got finished saying that we won't be spending $100,000. So therefore we're going to take that, move that over into calculate to support getting to that $700-something thousand. In a normal year, we would not have had that funding. But now we're just combing through the budgets because this is a project we know we have to get done. And somebody will say, well, you've always had it in operations. Well, that's because our buses aren't running, but yet we still want to utilize the funding. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. So you're finding savings in other areas.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That helps a lot to understand.
All right. Thanks. Whew. Okay, Jeff, thanks.
And so there we are, all the way over to the right under the purple, 13,704,000 in revenue, 13,704,000 in expenditures for a balanced budget for next year. Now, when we present the budget for adoption, this is the heart and soul of it. This is the guts of it. Then we'll dress it up with all kinds of other slides, but this is the hard math. I rely on Clio for all that other stuff. And so, oh, I was wondering, why do I have this up here again? Oh, that's anybody's wondering, that's where the entire textbook fund, it's one line in the state funding, that 73,553, that's where that comes from. Okay. And then nutrition, the state actually, when they put out their calculator, it's kind of a hit. I mean, they told us at the beginning of the year, we're going to get $31,000. Now it's 15,500. So they kind of whacked us there. And then kind of a large hit on the revenue. You see there the local other. That was all the stuff we used to sell a la carte in the cafeterias. Now, assuming we come back, well, maybe that revenue will come back next year. I should probably budget at least half of that. I'm going to make a note. It's not going to completely disappear. If our cafeterias open up, we're probably going to be selling a la carte stuff again. So. Okay, so we'll probably, like I say, we're probably going to have a surplus this year. The worst that can happen is the bank balance rises and we have to spend it in the nutrition fund anyway. So we just have to we'll put an excess funding plan in. So last slide, overall, there's not really a lot of detail we want to put in here. Right now, the overall budget for this year is 18,000,004 in revenue, 18,400 in expense. And but with that CARES funding, just throw this out there that for the first time, the overall budget for the Franklin City Public Schools next year will go over 20 million. So that's that is the first draft of the fiscal year 2022 budget. Any questions on that?
Thank you for your attention to detail.
Any questions for Mr. Ryder or Dr. Sterling in regards to Mr. Ryder's presentation?
No, but thank you for explaining your explanations.
All right,
Thank you,
well,
Mr.
all.
Ryder, for your love of numbers. That is all I have to say.
All of them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? And of course, for those board members, Mr. McCreary and Ms. Smith, who have not been through this budget process before, this is not our finalized budget. That will come back to us in March, I believe, for board approval, so that then that can go over to the city in time for the April 1 deadline. And then from there, the city will then either approve it or they will notify us of what they will approve. And at that point, we will formally adopt our budget or make any changes that are necessary. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ryder. You have been hard at work, I see, as always. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Sterling, I did want to backtrack real quick back up to Dr. Holloran's FFCRA presentation. Did you need a motion on how to proceed with that? Did you need a motion to either continue the leave under the FFCRA provisions or to adopt the recommendation as presented?
Well, that depends because the FFCRA is already in law at this time. It hasn't been extended. So because our recommendation is not to extend it, there's really nothing we need to do.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before we moved too far down and didn't address that. So I just wanted to make sure.
I knew you were going to key into that recommendation part. I appreciate that. But yeah, we don't have to.
Didn't want to overlook it. All right. So next up is 6.1 under the superintendent's overview. Dr. Sterling, if you would proceed.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm excited to say that I have completed the town hall meetings and they were very interesting, very, very interesting, very informative, especially the parent town hall meeting that was conducted, I think, 2 days ago. I had a lot of questions. Can I keep my child virtual? What happens if my child is, not being successful? Will they be failing? I mean, it was a lot of good questions, and I really appreciated the parents attending that meeting. I met with all of the schools, the faculty, staff, administration, and their faculty meetings, and that was really interesting as well. I thank them for all of the information and recommendations that they had. I appreciate that. And today I had JP King and FHS, and that was a wonderful time. I had a lot of students just asking, do they have the option of staying virtual? How many days a week will they be able to come back to school? Why is the recommendation for seniors not to come back? Just really, really good questions. And then I told the students that I would have to recommend the last part of the webinar to Mr. Phelps and his administration, because I think I had a lot of seniors in that meeting, because then questions started coming up about, are we going to have prom? What about the graduation? And I was like, oh, no, that's not this meeting. That's another meeting. But I did thank them for their enthusiasm and let them know that we will be hosting another webinar just for them, because they're, of course, this is their senior year. They're very excited, and they want to know. They want to be in the know. So I can't wait to have that meeting as well. So next. Oh, yes. This is something, if you can make this a little larger, because, you know, I need support with my eyes. You know, as you all know, we are on the Canvas platform. And Ms. Burkhalter, are you with us at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, 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 with all of your excitement and enthusiasm, tell the board where we are with Canvas and really, really play it up.
Of course I will. And I'm going to give Dr. Sterling her credit because, you know, behind closed doors, you know, sometimes we go toe to toe dancing from the tango to the waltz. But, you know.
I didn't say that honest.
Okay. But no, seriously, I do have to give her her credit. You know, she likes to push. And sometimes, you know, I have to tell her, we don't want to drag them. But COVID didn't give us any other option this time. We had already planned to implement a learning management system. And we were looking at Schoology and Canvas, as you know. But then when Canvas said, hey, we're going to give it for free because we know this is potentially coming down the pipe for legislation. So it's like, Dr. Sterling, we can try them out for free. If you don't like them, then you can go pay Schoology next year. But Canvas is more robust and we really got our bang for our buck, and not to have paid for it. I know Canvas is still the better choice over Schoology, and we know universities use it. Bradford University uses it, VCU uses it, and it's evolved from Blackboard. Well, you know, we brought our teachers back in August, but prior to bringing our teachers back, central office staff, all the instructional specialists, all of the principals went through the online learning modules for Canvas to earn their certificates for an introduction to Canvas, so that we could vet it and go through the troubleshooting with the teachers, so that when they came back, it would be as seamless as possible, because we knew with Canvas, them coming back early, just all the unknown with the unknown factors and the anxiety it would bring. We wanted this to be as smooth as possible. And I must say, it did work out. The teachers came back, they exceeded our expectations. Canvas customer support was amazing. Yep. At 10 and 11 o'clock at night and midnight, they were responding to our calls. When we were in virtual meetings with other districts, I remember one time somebody said, who's FCPS? And they said, oh, that's Franklin City Public Schools. Y'all are throwing bullets at us, texting and calling the teachers, but their response rate was amazing. And then Josh and Mita just working with them, we couldn't have got it done without them. Dr. Sterling was unwavering, per the usual, on her deadlines. Ms. Burkhalter, I still want my modules from them teachers on August 31st. I'm like, Dr. Sterling, you told me 50,000 times, we're gonna get it done, but just let me chunk them to get them there. And you all know Dr. Sterling, but it's always for the best interest of the children. And as usual, our teachers didn't only meet our expectations, they exceeded them. And you all saw samples of those modules in August. And I'm just happy to report that our work was not in vain, because, you know, Dr. Sterling likes to circle back, but in her terminology, she's that dresser drawer and she wants to close all of her drawers, or she's the file cabinet. So she wants to close all of her file cabinets. Ms. Burkhalter, are my modules still quality? You know, I want to make sure you all are circling back. So Tuesday morning, when I came in and saw this email that said we were 96%, at a 96% implementation rate, and the fact that we did it in less than 6 months. So out of 113 districts that are utilizing Canvas, less than 50% have this rating. And so Dr. Sterling, you know, she loves her data. Ms. Burkhalter, 95.6%. Where's my 100%? And, you know, after I reflected and went back, I'm like, we gave them a projected number. And at that time, that was our membership. So that's what they did, the percentage off of what they have in there. So it's kind of like the license. We said we need this many licenses because we're going to have 1,000 and something students, but we're actually down to the low to the high 900s. So that's why it's 96%, but we know that's actually 100. So yes, our teachers' work is speaking for itself, and to know that that online provider that not only works with pre-K through 12, but higher learning education sees the work that we're doing, and they took the time to email us and commend us. So that's what that is.
They did a great job.
Awesome.
Yes, yes. And it goes right out to our teachers, because you already know we've had teachers that have been with us 10, 15, 20, some 25 years, and they were very intimidated and scared at first. But as you can see, they've embraced it. The professional development that was given, the support from Brett Halter and the instructional specialists and the administrative team, everybody was trained. And to see the provider actually say, oh my goodness, out of 113 schools, you are one of the top schools in the state with implementation of your learning, of Canvas. So I just needed to tell that to the board.
Thank you for your leadership, Dr. Sterling.
No,
and
thank you.
And thank you for highlighting the instructional specialists, because again, we cannot move this division or do what we do without them. They literally strap those schools on their back. So definitely want to give them credit as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, I think, is there anything else?
I have a comment.
Oh, absolutely.
I briefly worked with Schoology, and even though I didn't work with Canvas, I can see that Canvas was the better portal. So I'm glad that you chose Canvas. Canvas seemed to be more user-friendly. Actually, Schoology frustrated me. So thank you for choosing Canvas, and I can see that your decision has paid off.
It has, and thank you for that. And we are definitely looking for a blended instructional model next year. Since all of our students have laptops, we are already on Canvas. We want to be able to make certain our students' skills digitally get stronger and stronger, so we can narrow that digital divide with utilizing online platforms, because you already know our kindergartners are the class of 2050. 2030, we have the class of 2035, and almost everything is going to be digital. So now is the time with the pandemic happening that pushed us into a wall-to-wall learning platform. I think we need to continue to utilize that and integrate that within our academic platform and services that we provide our children. And I'm just so pleased that we have an instructional personnel and support that is 100% versed on delivering a quality education through an online platform. Not many people can say that, but we as Franklin City continue to accelerate Franklin forward. Now that's my motto.
I think Ms. Burkholder needs to work on her enthusiasm, because she's a little too subdued and shy, but
I think so. I think she really is.
No, seriously, every morning, most of us look at the VSBA news, and every day there's a problem with some school system. They don't have laptops. They don't have hotspots. They don't have computer access. The system didn't work. The kids aren't logging on. And ours has been a relatively smooth transition, I think, and Burkholder and Dr. Sterling deserve a lot of credit, as well as Josh and all the background people too.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
It has truly been a team effort. And I can, the 7 of us get to see this from the board side, and I get the unique perspective to be on the opposite side as a parent as well. And it has really been enlightening being on that side.
But what we're seeing here as board members about the transition and how this has been implemented and the ease at which it was implemented really is, once the kids got on and the staff got on, and after that first week or two, it really has been like riding a bicycle. I mean, it really has been, the kids were out for 2 weeks at Christmas. They came right back, and it was just a smooth transition right back in, and looking at it, and, not just from the Canvas perspective, but when we talk about instruction, and I'm sure we'll start looking at that in the coming weeks, but seeing it from the parent side. And, this week was SOL week for the high school, and it really has not been as chaotic as some people might make it out to be. It's actually been pretty smooth. And you have to commend all the staff for that, from the top right on down. So I want to say kudos to the staff, to the teachers, I'm going to say to the IT department, because we never have really mentioned them throughout this process, and they are integral with getting this up and running and taking care of our technology needs as situations arise. Thank you to every single one of you for all that you have done to make this transition the smoothness that we are speaking of. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And to the fearless leader as well.
Oh, thanks. And that concludes the superintendent report.
Bob, do you have any comment on that report?
Which one? Oh, the Canvas?
No, Mr. Holt. How was that report tonight?
Oh, the governor's handbook?
No. How was Sterling's report?
Oh.
Was it Sterling as always?
It was a Sterling report.
He does that every time. Thank
As
you.
always. I couldn't work it in last time, though.
Yep.
Good things are happening.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sterling, for that. And thank you as well to your staff for their presentations.
Absolutely.
So moving on, we are down to item number 7, which is business by school board members. First item I did want to mention, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Holt. Your statement of economic interest, remember they are due every year. This year, February 1. So if you have not gotten that completed, because we are all required to submit that, and there is a fine involved if it's not submitted by the deadline, get those done. They go back to Ms. Moore. One of the things that you can do is if you bring up the form, I believe you can actually fill it out and actually save it so that you have it for next year, so that then you can just go through and make any adjustments you need to. But it does have to have your signature, and it does have to be turned in to Ms. Moore by February the 1st. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and get that completed. All right, Mr. Holt, I'll let you go next. I think you have an update on the governance handbook.
I do, and I'm happy to report that everything is in. All the comments and revisions I have. The next step is getting with Ms. Moore to figure out the best way to let the board look at those revisions and vote yes or no. So she and I have not talked about that. That'll be our next step, and I'll keep you posted on that for our next meeting. But I was very pleased with everyone's efforts getting your information in.
Mr. Holt, I still have to give you mine.
No, you don't. Yours is already done, Dr. Shelton. See, she's so fast, she didn't even know she did it.
Okay.
No, we're only going to have about, I don't know, 5 or 6 meetings to go over all of that stuff, but yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It won't take long.
Yeah. And some of it was really easy because it was just going back and verifying that some of it was still correct. So that made it fairly easy.
Some
And I
of
want
it just cut and pasting from the state
to,
websites and stuff.
yep.
Mhm.
And I want to thank you for taking the lead on that and getting that done too, Mr. Holt. That has been a huge task and a little bit of an undertaking, and thank you for doing that.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Anything else by school board members that anyone wants to share?
I am attending the virtual Capitol Conference on Monday afternoon. And that's a conference the governor will speak or is supposed to speak there. But it's more or less a budget update that the legislature is looking at, things they want to do, things they're not going to do. So that'll be interesting to get the latest update on that. And I'll let everyone know once that meeting is over.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I'm going back to Travis Felt's presentation at our last meeting. The wrestling team was finally able to have their first contest against 2 different schools, and they were able to come out victorious for the tournament. They won it. So yay for the coaches and the athletes and the administration for following everything that they need to follow for the COVID protocol. Everybody is staying well. And I do agree with him when he said that it's a good trial run for when we get the kids back into school, because, you know, the buses have to be running and, you know, the sanitation has to be done and everything. And I'm seeing it with my own eyes. It's successful.
Wonderful. Congratulations to the wrestling team. That's big. That's yay for them. Any other items under business by school board members? I will just give a brief update on Appomattox Regional Governor School. As I mentioned last week, the board met last Thursday, as a matter of fact, right before our meeting, our work session, and they are in the process of a search for executive director. One thing that did come out after that meeting is they have opened back up the application process for that, and we're looking at next steps for the interview process and selection. Dr. Sterling is, of course, sitting on the steering committee as a superintendent of a contributing division. So she will be a part of that process of looking at those applicants as they come in. We have not defined yet the actual interview committee, but that should be forthcoming. So we will probably, as a division, I will probably have a hand in that process. So as that happens, I will, of course, keep the board informed of steps. Anything else? All right, important dates to remember. I know nobody in the division is looking forward to having Friday, January the 29th off. I know everybody just wants to be here and loves coming every day of the week, but I'm so sorry. Friday, January 29th is a teacher work day, and there will be no student attendance that day. So sorry, students. February the 4th will be our next work session. Keep in mind, by that date, I would like to have the items that we discussed last week in the closed session, so that we can start compiling that. The FCPS report card distribution for the first semester will be on Thursday, February the 11th. I'm going to guess that would be 2021, not 221. Would be taking it back old. That's really taking it back old school. And then, of course, our regular board meeting will be on the 18th of February. Ms. Moore has actually added a slew more of minutes there for our review. Wow, that was some that I didn't even catch, Ms. Moore. So there's some from May, and I think there was some technical difficulties is why that was delayed. Then our September board meeting, October work session, and our December 17th board meeting. So those are right now just for review. We will take those at our next meeting, our regular meeting, and bring those back for a vote. Any questions? All right, that moves us to 8.1. We're going to go through the formal motion on this since we do have Ms. Smith with us. That way we can make sure that everyone is recorded as being present. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
I think I've got a first and I've got a second.
No,
Dr. Shelton and Ms. Williams. So any discussion?
No.
All right, hearing none, we're going to move by ward, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. And if you vote any other way, you have to stay on the Zoom all night.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Ms. Smith?
Tanya
Ms.
Smith,
Smith?
Ward 3, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Terry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will get back together on February the 4th, and I will see you all then.